Good evening, everyone. It's All the Talk, new episode tonight. For the first time in that show, I'm going to talk about the world of soccer or football. I'm going to call it football here because that's my number one word for this game. And I have the pleasure to introduce you someone who is working in the soccer in Quebec, in the football in Canada and Quebec since a long, long time. His name is Andrea Di Pietrantonio. To be exact with the pronunciation. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Greg.
What can you let us know a little bit more about? Where are you from? What is the beginning of your career? I made some research and I know that you work a little bit in the MLS. You work for the Impact. You work in the West as well. Then you move on to some university. Can you share that with us? And how did you fall in love with that professional career that you have probably 20 years ago?
So I'm 46 years old now. I've started coaching now. It's almost a bit less than 30 years. I started coaching in my late teens. I've always had a passion for football. So I played as a youth here in the East End of Montreal, here in St. Leonard, most of my life. So I was studying to become a phys ed teacher. And I basically used my passion for football, and that got me into coaching after that. So it's a mixture of teaching and coaching at the same time.
So around what age did you start to consider that you could probably make a career out of it?
To be honest, in my mid-20s, it was something that was really that I really wanted to do. But with the reality of soccer or football in this country, I quickly understood that football would be a passion for me, but my main job would be as a phys ed teacher. But I was trying to pursue my career as a soccer coach at the same time. So I have a parallel type of life as
So your first year when you are working for Impact de Montréal and you are working for, what is the name of the team in Vancouver?
I went in 2016. I got the opportunity to go to San Francisco.
San Francisco, okay.
I went to San Francisco. I was lucky enough earlier in my career and as a coach to meet Mark Dos Santos. Him and I clicked very well when we worked together in 2007, 2008 in Montreal with the Impact with John Limniadis. And after that, when he decided to go travel the world, he always told me, he goes, if I get an opportunity to bring you with me at a point or at another, I'd like to bring you over. And the opportunity came around in 2016. And I went to San Francisco with him for about half a season. And then for a personal reason, being away from the family was becoming very difficult for me. I decided to halfway through to call it quits and head back home to my wife and my kids.
Let's talk about the reality today. You have a lot of experience, obviously, and what do you think about what we do in Quebec, soccer-wise? Because from my point of view, coming from Europe as well, I've seen lots of good kids here. I see lots of good potential, 8 to 12 to 13 years old kids who doesn't have much sometimes to envy to some kids in Europe. I see lots of good academy coming out of it. I'm new in that world. My son is playing, obviously, so I open my eyes and trying to see the coaches, the guys who are involved, the guys who are passionate, the guys who are giving everything for this to happen in this country because it's a different environment than other countries. So, what do you think? Is it possible to make something happen here, or
that's $1 million question? I wish I would have the exact answer to it. I've had the opportunity in the past over 20, 25 years to do most of my work. I've had the chance to work with pros, but I've done most of my work at the youth level with players between the age of 13 or even younger to 17. Quality players, there are. I totally agree with you. I had the opportunity frequently to go down south to Mexico, to the US, even to Europe. Our players, I'll speak for boys because I've just started coaching women not long ago. But on the boys' side, at 12, 13, 14-year-olds, we definitely have players that could play abroad, that are good enough to play abroad. I've always said it, they're just probably unlucky to be born in a country like ours, which doesn't have these structures for them to develop the way they should be developed. The fact is here there's a lot of variables that are a problem. We have a country which is humongous. We have a lot of players. The geography is a problem. The weather is a problem too. The cost is a problem. There's a lot of variables. It's nice to look at what some of the structures abroad are, but can we take some of the stuff that they do outside of this country and bring it here and try to tweak it and adapt it? But it is not always simple to do. It's not always simple.
So you know what I like what you're saying. You know, the country we have the same issue in swimming. It's a huge country. Obviously, it's an individual sport, so it's different than soccer. So it makes it easier for our athletes, harder for you because lot of movement, lot of money involved. So it's not that easy. But you know, we in the last 20 years in Canada, I think we have seen a couple of guys coming out. You know, coming out of this system. What would be like for you if we could change a little thing to? Because I think that we have good players until, like you say, 13, 14 years old. Where are they going after?
But that's a bit of the problem. That's a bit of the problem. That's a bit of the problem of our structure. Is that there's a lot. If I've always looked at it as a pyramid. We have a lot of players at the bottom of our pyramid. If you look at the amount of players just in this province, you're talking about over almost 150,000 players. Yeah, that's a lot of players. It's a lot of players. But how many of those players will aspire to go to the top of the pyramid, which are the professional teams? In the whole country, there's 3 MLS teams, and we're talking now with the new CPL league, another 6 to 7 teams. So there's the equivalent of about 12 professional teams in a country the size of Canada. There's more professional teams in London itself than that. So we have to keep things in perspective when we make these statements with what they do abroad. Is how can we take it and try to adapt it to our own structure? And I think that's what we're lacking. It's that top of that pyramid for players between the age of 15 to 20 years old. What do we have for them? Because a lot of our players, by the time they're 15, 16 years old, will keep on playing, but they'll play 7-a-side soccer just for the fun of it.
So out of those 8 professional teams that you are talking about, how many of them are really interested about developing and having a formation center?
It's difficult because there's the money aspect of it. The Montreal Impact is trying to have an academy, but it costs a lot of money to run a youth structure. For the professional clubs, it's always what's the return on the investment. If I invest a lot of money in my youth academy, that means I need to be able to sell some of these players. And we have just started to touch that in this country with that, of the fact of being able to develop young players. Oh, and then, you know what, maybe we can sell them. A bit like what Vancouver did with Alphonso Davies.
Yeah.
You know, but Alphonso came from refugee player, came from Africa, comes into Edmonton, from Alberta, ends up in Vancouver, from Vancouver then gets sold. You know, we need more of those to make our professional team see that there's a good possibility on the return of your initial investment at the youth level.
What would be for you okay, we have those kind of players coming from a lot of different countries, and I think it's a very big strength we have in Canada, because I agree, it's a big country, we have lots of issues with money, soccer costs a lot of money to develop, especially at the youth age, but we have so many different guys from like, to me, Canada looks like to me like France at another level, because in this country there is lots of guys who are born and raised in Canada, but originally from Africa, from Europe, from South
Okay.
America,
No,
from Asia. So
it's,
we have the number, we have the player. I think
it's a bit of the same thing as you can relate to the Americans. Immigration
yeah.
wise, it's a bit like us in Canada. The fact that it's a very multi-ethnical amount of population that's there. The thing is that I think in Canada, just like in the United States, soccer or football is still not in our own DNA. It's not our number one sport.
Even with the migration and those people
It's
coming
starting
in.
to. It's starting to, but it's still not our number one sport culturally. Meaning, even at the government level, at all the level, the funding, it becomes difficult sometimes to be able to finance all of this. So, I agree with you with the fact that we could line up a team made up of different ethnical background, which could help us do different types of things on the field. We can have the athletic players. We can have the more Latin type of player that are more technical. We can manage to do a bit of everything, but it's a challenge. It's a very big challenge.
Yeah. But we have like having the number. And I had a conversation yesterday with one of the greatest coaches in Canada, and you know what he told me. And yeah, I want to know what you are thinking about what he quotes. He said, sometimes we complain a lot about the lack of this, the lack of that, the lack of this, the lack of that, and lack of space or the lack of hours to go to do more or whatever. And his first answer was, you should coach better.
Oh, that's for sure.
Just coach better. So I want to go on that topic with you. So now we don't have the facilities, we don't have the number, the money wise, I mean, but on the coaching aspect,
I think it's one of the biggest issues, Greg. I was going to tell you before. I was going to tell you after.
The coaching aspect?
The coaching aspect. We've got 150,000 players in this province, but how many competent coaches? That's a problem.
So I got to tell you a story.
That's a big problem because if you and one of the difference between Europe or South America, wherever it is the fact that some of their better coaches are coaching young players. As well as I do. If the base of an athlete is not there, you cannot make it up 5, 6, 7 years later. The bases need to be taught properly. But if there's not good educators that are at the youth level very young, and when I say very young, I'm talking about 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, don't expect that by the time these players get to 13, 14, that all of a sudden a good coach is going to be there and with a magic wand, he's gonna make them play soccer. It doesn't work like that. He needs to have the kids need to come in with a certain base. And right now, to me, there's not enough qualified good coaches at the youth level to teach these kids.
What would be the way to make it better, like to teach them to be a better coach?
Coaching education. You need to invest. You need to invest more money in coaching education.
So does Quebec do that? The different.
I think more and more. More and more. There is coaching education out there. There's more mentorship programs to help the coaches. I know since a friend of mine, Mike Vitulano, got involved at the federation as in coaching education. Mike does a great job at it, but it will take time. And then the same way we say there's a lot of people say, yeah, there's a lot of players in soccer in the province, 150,000 of them. Yeah, but I mean these 150,000 players need to be coached. It's nice to have all these players, but if there's no coaches, there's no development.
So what I was going to tell you is when I arrived here and I started to meet different people from different backgrounds and people start to ask me what I was doing. So I was telling them I was coaching. And most of them used to tell me, yeah, but what are you doing else? I'm coaching.
You know what? That's funny that you say that because a bit younger, I must have been about 15 years ago or something. I tried to, when I bought, I think my first house, I went to the bank and the bank manager asked me, so what do you do? I go, I coach. Because then I was coaching with the Impact at that moment. You coach. Okay, but what do you really do for a job? I coach. No, okay. What do you really do for it? And that's an issue in this country. There's very many people that coach as a living. If you compare it to some other countries, there's it's a recognized profession to be a coach, a professional coach. And when I say a professional coach, it doesn't just mean to coach a professional team, but you could be just like you do. You coach Olympic athletes in your discipline. But in this country, it's still, and even the ones that do it, it's not like they're multimillionaire doing it.
No.
It's a subject that I enjoy tremendously because being a teacher, I do deal with parents. I don't have a choice. And I think it's a very, it's a generational type of thing. I started teaching 20 years ago, coaching about 25 years ago. The parent involvement or the kids that we used to deal with were completely different 25 years ago. It's a sign of times, whether you like it or not. And I often say it to younger coaches that I mentor, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to deal with the parents, because in most clubs that you're dealing with, one of the issues is the fact that the parents are paying members. If I pay for a service, I want something in return. That's the way a lot of the parents see it. Now, what I often say too is that do not forget the parents, most of, and I don't want to put them all in the same boat because it's unfair. It's unfair. But a lot of the parents, whether you like it or not, are there for their own kids. So until in their head, you're treating their kids the right way, they'll think you're the best coach in the world. But the day that is the son or the daughter is not up to the level or is not as good as he should be, you're going to become the worst coach in the world. The parents are, whether you like it or not, are very protective of their son or their daughter.
Of course.
So and being in a market of I get a service, they think that they have the entitlement to make whichever type of comments that they want. That's where sometimes you need to set boundaries with them. And that's the difficulty. That's the difficulty. And that's what a lot of younger coaches are having a hard time with, dealing with the parents more than the kids themselves. Most of them have no problems dealing with the kids.
It's very, very tough. I mean, look, I do think that I learn with the years to deal with parents, and sometimes some agree, sometimes some they don't, and you have to accept that even if it's not going your way, you have to find a way. So if you had a big advice to give to a young coach today, what would it be?
Be open-minded.
Be open-minded.
There's no doubt in my mind. Be open-minded.
And
take the good and the bad from everything that you see, and get something out of it. There's too many people out there that just go through times without getting nothing out of it. If you see something bad, just make sure you don't do it. If you see something good, take it, adapt it to your reality. Adapt it. I've always said it, the best coach are the people that copy others, but you cannot just copy paste. This is not a computer. You need to be able to copy and adapt to your reality, because your reality might not be my reality and might not be the reality from my next door neighbor. You need to be able to adapt it to your own reality.
You're 100% right. And if you had to give an advice to a young player, 12, 11, because that's the age of my son, so he's 11 years old. He's going to be 11. And to finish, if you had a message to send to the community of coaches in Canada and Quebec today, a positive message, what would it be?
I would say to them, a bit like I told earlier, be open-minded. Sometimes there's changes coming around. You got to take the waves and you got to adapt. You got to be willing to accept the changes. We got too many people that like to complain, but are not willing to find solutions to make things better. If you're just out there complaining all the time, okay, but can you be part of the solution? If you cannot be part of the solution, how can you help? In which way can you help? So be more of a of a solution than just a problem in the structure.
What would you say to a kid who dreams about soccer in Quebec?
Keep on dreaming. Keep on dreaming. Keep on dreaming. Sky's the limit. But be realistic. Always keep your options open. That's why I'll tell all the athletes that I deal with, make sure you do well at school. If you're not doing well at school, we're going to have problems on the soccer field, you and I, later on. Because it is going to be, chances are, your education that's going to get you somewhere. If your education allows you to even continue being an elite athlete at the same time, hats off for you. But make sure you do well at school, because chances are it's your brain that's going to help you succeed in life.
Andrea, thank you very much. I had a lot of fun. It was a good surprise for me. Thank you for accepting that invitation again. Guys, this should be episode 10 or episode 11. Keep following, subscribe on the channel, put a thumb right there or a thumb down if you want, but keep supporting us. That's what we want. It was all the talk with Andrea. Andrea, you have the last word to conclude.
Greg, thank you very much for having me over tonight. I'm not convinced about that jersey. Next time I see you, I'll make sure I'll bring you the real one.
Thank you a lot. Have a good night.
Thank you, Greg.